It was a cold and quiet night in the mountains, far away from the noise of cities and people. The wind whispered through the tall pine trees, and the stars above were shining brightly. Deep in the woods, inside a small wooden cabin, lived a man named Elliot Barnes. He was a forest ranger, someone who took care of the trees, the animals, and the land. Elliot lived alone. He liked the silence. He liked being away from the world. But this night was different. Something was about to happen that would change his life forever. Elliot had just finished dinner. He sat in his old armchair near the fireplace, sipping hot tea and reading an old book. The fire crackled softly, and the warm glow filled the room. He was almost ready to go to bed when he heard it, a soft knock at the door. It was strange. No one ever came to his cabin. The nearest house was miles away. At first he thought it must be the wind, but then he heard it again. Knock, knock. This time a little louder. He stood up, his heart beating faster. Maybe someone was lost. Maybe an animal had bumped into the door. He grabbed his flashlight and slowly opened the door. What he saw was not what he expected. There on the wooden porch was a small bundle. It looked like a baby wrapped in shiny silver cloth. The baby was crying. Soft, weak cries like it had been left alone for a long time. Elliot looked around quickly, shining his flashlight into the trees. But there was no one. No car. No footsteps. In the snow, no sound except the baby's soft cries. Then just for a second he saw something or someone. A tall figure glowing faintly in the distance, moving silently between the trees. It looked like a woman, but not like any woman he had ever seen. She was tall and thin, with skin that shimmered like moonlight. And then, she was gone. Elliot was frozen. Was he dreaming? Was this real? But the baby was real. The baby was crying. Without thinking more, Elliot picked up the bundle and took it inside. He placed the baby gently on a blanket near the fire. The cloth it was wrapped in wasn't like anything he'd seen before. It was smooth and warm, like metal, but soft. He opened the cloth a little to look at the baby's face and gasped. This was not an ordinary baby. The baby had two big eyes that glowed slightly in the dim light, not like a flashlight, but like the stars. Its skin was soft and smooth, but with a faint purple tint. Its fingers were long and thin, with tiny glowing lines running under the skin, like little rivers of light. It was the most beautiful and strange thing he had ever seen. He should have been afraid. He should have called someone, but something in his heart told him not to. This baby was alone. This baby needed help. And somehow he felt connected, like this baby was meant to be here. He searched the cloth for any clue and found a strange pendant, metallic, shaped like a spiral galaxy. It was cool to the touch, but pulsed gently, like it was alive. He had no idea what it meant, but he knew it was important. Elliot decided to stay awake that night. He watched over the baby, fed it warm milk with a small spoon, and rocked it gently when it cried. Slowly, the baby stopped crying and fell asleep, breathing quietly, its tiny chest rising and falling. As Elliot sat there, holding the baby in his arms, memories came rushing back. Years ago, he had a daughter. She had passed away when she was just a baby. That pain had never left him. Maybe that's why he had come to the mountains, to run away from the world, from the memories, from the heartbreak. But now, here in his arms, was a child once again. Not his, not even human, but something told him that this baby had been left on his doorstep for a reason. Outside, the forest was silent. The stars above shone a little brighter, as if watching. The next morning, Elliot woke up in the armchair, the baby still asleep beside him. The fire had died down and snow had started to fall outside. Everything was quiet, peaceful. But the world had changed. Over the next few days, Elliot took care of the baby as best as he could. He gave her a name, Nova. It felt right, like the stars had whispered it to him. Nova was unlike any child he had ever seen. She grew faster. Her eyes followed him with unusual awareness, and sometimes when she cried, strange things happened. Once a cup floated off the table and landed gently on the floor. Another time the fire sparked without him touching it. He didn't tell anyone. Who would believe him? A baby from the stars? A child with powers? People would take her away. Scientists would put her in a lab. She would never be safe. He had to protect her. He made changes to the cabin, sealed the windows tighter, blocked the view from the forest, and avoided going into town. His radio calls to the ranger station were short. "All's good up here," he'd say. Quiet as usual, but he wasn't quiet. Not inside. Every night he thought about the glowing figure he had seen in the forest, the woman who left Nova. Why had she done it? Why him? Was she still out there? Sometimes, late at night, he stood outside the cabin, holding Nova in his arms, looking up at the sky. She would point with her tiny fingers, making soft sounds that didn't sound like any earth language. And once, just once, he saw a light move across the sky. Not a plane, not a star, but something else. Something fast. Something watching. One evening he found a patch of ground near the edge of the woods where the snow had melted in a perfect circle. In the middle, the grass had turned blue and grown longer than the rest. Something had been there. Maybe the woman, maybe something else. Then, something strange happened. He noticed the pendant glowing brighter. It pulsed softly when Nova was near. One night, as she lay asleep in his lap, it projected a tiny hologram. Images of stars, strange symbols, and what looked like a map. He didn't understand any of it, but he knew one thing. Nova didn't come from here. And maybe someone wanted her back. Elliot's heart was torn. He had lost one child and now found another. He didn't know if he could survive losing her, too. But for now she was here. She was safe. And that's all that mattered. As the snow piled up outside and the days grew shorter, Elliot found a new purpose. He wasn't just a man hiding from the world anymore. He was a protector, a father. Nova smiled when he held her, and her laughter filled the cabin like music. But the forest wasn't silent anymore. Sometimes at night, he heard things. Strange sounds, soft humming, like machines in the distance, lights deep between the trees. The animals were acting different, birds flying away suddenly, wolves howling at nothing. It felt like something was coming. Still, Elliot stayed strong. Whatever was out there, he would face it. For Nova. For the second chance he had been given. He didn't know the whole story yet. He didn't know who the woman in the forest was, or why Nova had been left behind. But he knew this. He would never abandon her. He would keep her safe, even if it meant going to the ends of the earth or beyond. And in the quiet warmth of his cabin, far from the world, a new family had begun. One man, one child, a human and an alien, connected not by blood but by something stronger. Love, and love, was just the beginning. Elliot never thought his quiet cabin in the forest would turn into a home for something or someone so different. Each day with Nova brought something new, something strange, and something beautiful. She wasn't like any baby he had ever known, not even close. Her body looked small and fragile, but sometimes she would lift things with her mind, make lights flicker, or even warm her own milk without a flame. At first, Elliot thought he was imagining things, but no. This child left on his doorstep had powers. In the beginning, he tried to treat her like a normal baby. He changed her, fed her, sang to her. She liked the sound of his voice even if she didn't understand the words. Her laughter, light and musical, echoed in the small cabin like bells from another world. But soon, Elliot noticed that Nova was changing, faster than he expected. One week, she looked like a newborn. The next, she was sitting up on her own, her eyes glowing brighter, her mind learning at a speed no human baby could match. Elliot started writing down everything. He had notebooks filled with drawings of her symbols, notes about the colors in Her skin when she felt emotions and sketches of how the pendant glowed when she cried. The pendant, still hanging around her neck, seemed to pulse softly in rhythm with her heartbeat. Sometimes it showed moving stars or small flashes of unknown words, but Elliot didn't know what any of it meant. It was like the pendant was alive, or maybe connected to something far away. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, something else was happening. The woman, the tall, glowing figure Elliot had seen the night Nova arrived, was still out there. Her name was Lura. She was hiding, weak, starving, but alive. Lura had made the hardest decision of her life when she left Nova on the human's doorstep. Her ship had crashed days earlier, and her body had been badly injured. She couldn't keep running. She knew they were close, others from her own world hunting her, hunting Nova. They were not coming to save her. They were coming to take, to control, to destroy. Nova was too special. Her power was too rare. If they got her, she would become a weapon, a tool for war. That's why Lura had chosen to give her up. A human's kindness was her only hope. Every day, Lura watched from the shadows. She saw Elliot carry Nova in his arms, feed her, sing to her, wrap her in blankets. She saw him cry sometimes when he looked at her, as if remembering something painful. And she saw how Nova responded to him, not with fear, but with joy. Lura's heart ached. Her body, once strong and filled with light, was now thin and shaking. But she had done the right thing. Nova was safe, for now. Back in the cabin, Elliot was facing new challenges. Nova had stopped eating normal food. She pushed away the milk and baby cereal. Her skin looked dry, her eyes dimmer than before. He tried everything, fruits, soups, even melted snow water. Nothing worked. He could feel her strength fading, and it terrified him. One night, as he sat beside her, Nova touched his face with her tiny fingers. Her skin felt cold. Then, she showed him something. Not with words, but through images. Suddenly, inside his mind, he saw flashes of stars, a silver city floating in space, and a crystal that glowed like fire. Then an image of Earth, a forest, his cabin, himself, and then her mother. Elliot gasped. He didn't understand how, but he knew it was real. Nova was trying to talk to him, not with her voice, but with her mind. She was showing him who she was, where she came from, and what she needed. The crystal, she needed something like that to survive. Earth didn't have it. He stood up, shaken. He didn't know what to do. He needed help, but who could he tell? The town doctor, the police, they would take her away. He couldn't risk it. Outside, the forest was quiet, but not for long. Something was coming. A few days later, strange things began happening in town. People reported weird lights in the sky. Animals started acting nervous. A few hikers said they heard a high-pitched sound in the woods like metal singing. And then, they came. They were from a secret government group called Eris. No one knew what Eris stood for. They didn't wear normal uniforms. They wore black suits, carried machines that hummed, and asked a lot of questions. They said they were doing environmental testing, but Elliot knew better. One morning, they knocked on his door. "Mr. Barnes," one of them said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We heard you had some disturbances up here. Mind if we ask a few questions?" Elliot kept his face calm, but inside his heart was racing. He told them nothing. He said the nights were quiet, the forest peaceful. He even joked that maybe aliens were visiting the town. The agent's smile widened just a little. "If you see anything strange," he said, "do let us know." After they left, Elliot bolted the doors and covered the windows. Nova was getting weaker. He didn't have much time. That night, something incredible happened. Lura came out of hiding. Elliot was sitting by the fire when he heard a sound outside. Not a knock, but a soft humming. He grabbed a flashlight, opened the door, and there she was, the woman from the forest, tall, silver-skinned, with eyes like liquid light. She was shaking, her arms crossed over her chest, barely standing. He didn't run, he didn't scream. Somehow he knew who she was. You're her mother, he whispered. Lura nodded slowly. Nova, she said, her voice weak but beautiful. Is she alive? Elliot stepped aside. Come in. She entered the cabin and saw Nova lying on the couch, her body pale, her breathing shallow. A small sound escaped Lura's mouth, a sound of deep sorrow. She fell to her knees beside her daughter and placed a glowing hand on her chest. For a moment Nova stirred. Her eyes fluttered open. Amma, she whispered. Elliot watched in awe. Lura turned to him. She is dying, she said. This world, it has no core light, no sun crystal. She needs energy from home. Can we get her back? Elliot asked. Lura shook her head. Not now. My ship is broken. I used the last of my power to hide it. I stayed to protect her, but I am weak. I cannot save her alone. Then let me help, Elliot said. Lura looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw something she hadn't expected, not fear, not hate, but love. Real, human love. The kind that crosses stars. You already have, she said softly. They stayed up all night, planning, talking. Lura told him about their world, a place far beyond the edge of the galaxy, where people lived in floating cities and traveled on rivers of light. But not all of them were peaceful. Some wanted to control others. Nova was born with a rare energy inside her, a gift that could either heal planets or destroy them. That's why she had to be hidden. That's why they were hunted. The ones who come, Lura warned. They are not human, but they wear human faces. They will take her if they find her. Elliot felt anger rise in him. Then we'll stop them. Lura smiled, weak but proud. You are more than human. That night, as Nova slept in the arms of her mother, Elliot stood by the window and looked out at the dark forest. The pendant was glowing again, brighter than before. It pulsed in rhythm with something far away, something coming closer. The owl. Stars above didn't look peaceful anymore. They looked like eyes watching. The next morning, snow covered the forest like a white blanket. The air was still almost too quiet, like the world was holding its breath. Inside the cabin, Elliot sat near the fireplace, his hands wrapped around a cup of cold coffee he had forgotten to drink. Across the room, Lura lay resting, her silver skin looking dull and tired. Nova, wrapped in soft blankets, was asleep between them, her tiny chest rising slowly. Elliot couldn't stop thinking. So much had happened in just a few days. An alien baby had appeared on his doorstep. A mysterious woman from the stars had returned. And now powerful enemies were coming. The peaceful life he once knew was gone. But he didn't feel regret. Looking at Nova's face, he felt something deeper than fear. He felt purpose. Lura slowly opened her eyes. We don't have much time, she said softly. Elliot leaned forward. Tell me what to do. Lura explained everything. Her ship, which had crashed deep in the forest, still held a small power core. That core was the only thing strong enough to keep Nova alive until they could leave Earth. But it was hidden in a place surrounded by danger, near the ancient rocks at Shadow Ridge, a place where the forest grew wild and strange. Worse, Lura believed the hunters from her world, the ones chasing Nova, were already near. They had followed her trail. It was only a matter of time before they found the cabin. Elliot nodded. Then we get the core, together. No, Lura said. You'll go. I'm too weak. I don't even know what it looks like. She took a deep breath and held out her hand. In it, a faint image appeared in the air, a glowing blue crystal the size of an apple, shaped like a drop of water. It will call to you when you're near, she said. You'll feel it, just like Nova does. Elliot packed a bag with water, tools, and the small pendant Nova had been wearing. Lura gave him directions, marking the path through the thickest part of the forest. You must hurry, she said, before they do. With a final look at Nova, Elliot stepped out into the cold morning air. His boots crunched in the snow as he disappeared into the woods. The journey was not easy. The forest felt different now. The trees were taller, their branches twisted like they were alive. The wind carried strange whispers like voices in a language he couldn't understand. Birds flew away at the sight of him, and once, he saw a deer with glowing eyes watching, from the shadows. The deeper he went, the stranger it became. After hours of walking, he reached the edge of Shadow Ridge. The cliffs rose high, covered in sharp rocks and thick vines. Fog rolled between the stones, hiding the path. But Elliot felt something, deep, in his chest, a pull like a magnet guiding him forward. He climbed carefully, slipping once on the ice but catching himself. As he reached the top of a ridge, he saw it, a soft blue light shining from a crack in the rock. The crystal. He hurried forward, but as he reached out to touch it, the ground beneath him shook. A sound, low, mechanical, unnatural, filled the air. Then, from behind the trees they came. 3 tall figures stepped into view. They wore human-like suits, black and shiny, but their faces were not human. Their skin was gray and smooth with large, empty eyes. They had no mouths, only thin slits where a nose should be. And in their hands they carried weapons that pulsed, with red energy. Elliot froze. The leader stepped forward, tilting its head. A voice echoed, not from its mouth but inside Elliot's mind. "Give us the child." Elliot's hands tightened around the pendant in his pocket. "Never." The creature raised its weapon. Elliot dove to the side as a beam of light shot past him, melting the snow where he had stood. He rolled behind a rock, heart pounding. The other 2 spread out, searching for him. Then, something incredible happened. The pendant in his hand began to glow. It grew warm, then hot, and suddenly, it floated into the air. A wave of energy exploded from it, knocking the nearest alien backward. The rock Elliot hid behind split open, and the crystal inside was fully revealed. He grabbed it as, soon as his fingers touched the crystal, images filled his mind. Stars, galaxies, endless space. He saw Nova smiling. He saw Lura crying. And he saw something else. A future where Nova stood tall, surrounded by light, healing a world torn by war. That vision gave him strength. He ran. The creatures chased him, firing blasts of energy that lit up the forest. Trees caught fire, animals scattered, and smoke filled the sky. Elliot sprinted through the snow, leaping over logs and dodging blasts. He could feel the crystal pulsing in his hand, guiding him. He didn't stop until he saw the roof of the cabin. Inside, Lura was holding Nova, rocking her gently. She looked up as Elliot burst through the door, breathless, dirty, and shaking. "I got it," he said, showing her the crystal. Lura's eyes filled with tears. "You're alive." Elliot quickly placed the crystal near Nova. As soon as it touched her skin, light spread across her body. Her eyes opened, wide and bright. Her skin, once pale, glowed with soft purple light. The pendant around her neck pulsed in time with the crystal, creating a hum that filled the room with warmth. "She's stabilizing," Lura whispered. "But they're close." Elliot nodded. "I saw them. They're not far behind." Lura stood stronger now, the light returning to her body. "Then we must prepare." They had little time. Together, they began to build defenses. Elliot used wood and metal scraps to block windows and set traps. Lura drew glowing symbols on the walls. Shields, she called them, made of ancient energy. Nova, though still weak, pointed at places they missed, helping in her own small way. Night fell, and with it came silence. A heavy silence. Then, movement. In the trees. Elliot grabbed a metal rod, the closest thing he had to a weapon. Lura stood tall, her eyes glowing like silver suns. Nova sat in a small cradle of blankets, holding the crystal, her face calm. The door burst open. The 3 creatures entered, weapons raised. But this time Elliot didn't run. The pendant glowed brighter than ever before. A wave of energy blasted outward, throwing the creatures back. One of them crashed into the wall and didn't move. The other 2 stood slowly, their bodies sparking. Lura stepped forward. She raised her hand and spoke in her own language. A command full of power. One of the creatures hesitated, lowering its weapon. "We don't have to fight," she said in Elliot's mind. "Let us go." But the leader wasn't listening. It raised its weapon again, aimed at Nova. Elliot moved before he could think. He leapt forward, slamming into the creature. They crashed to the ground, the weapon flying across the room. The alien screamed, a sound like tearing metal. Then something amazing happened. Nova stood up. She was glowing, fully, beautifully, like a star in a child's body. She raised her hands. The crystal in her palms burst with light. The entire cabin shook. The last two creatures screamed and vanished into thin air, like shadows chased by the sun. Silence returned. Elliot sat on the floor, heart pounding. Lura ran to Nova and hugged her tight. Nova smiled, a smile so bright it filled the room with peace. "You did it," Elliot said softly. "You saved us." Lura nodded. "No, she saved herself. She is ready." They all sat together, holding each other, surrounded by broken walls and fallen snow, but they were alive. They had survived. Outside, the stars began to move. Not like before, not slowly. This time, one of them grew larger. A ship. Lura looked up and knew. "My people," she said. "The real ones. The ones I called for. They're here." Elliot stood up, his heart suddenly heavy. "Will you leave?" he asked. Lura looked at him, then at Nova, then back. "Yes, we must. Nova's gift is too great. She must grow where she is safe." Elliot looked down. "I understand." But Nova crawled to him, grabbed his hand, and said her first real word in English. "Stay." Lura's eyes widened. "She wants you to come." Elliot blinked. "Me?" "She trusts you," Lura said. "You saved her life. You are part of her now." The ship landed quietly in a clearing. A ramp lowered. Light spilled across the snow. Elliot looked at the cabin one last time. The fireplace, the books, the pictures of a daughter he had lost. Then he looked at Nova, and he knew. He picked her up, held her close, and stepped onto the ramp beside Lura. As the ship rose into the stars, the forest grew silent once more. But in that silence, a story had ended, and a new one had begun. The ship rose into the sky, leaving Earth far behind. Elliot stood near a wide window, holding Nova in his arms. She looked outside with bright eyes, watching the clouds melt away as stars slowly appeared. Lura stood beside them, her silver cloak shining in the soft blue light of the ship's core. None of them spoke for a while. Words felt too small for what had just happened. For Elliot, the moment was unreal. A few weeks ago, he was just a lonely man in a quiet cabin, hiding from the world, trying to forget his pain. Now he was traveling across the stars, holding an alien child who had somehow become his daughter. Every second felt like a dream, but it was real. He could feel the warm weight of Nova in his arms. He could see the stars moving outside. He could feel the quiet humming of the ship beneath his feet. After some time, Lura touched a crystal panel on the wall. A smooth voice filled the room. It was the ship's intelligence system, calm, clear, and gentle. Destination locked. Estimated arrival, 3 days. Elliot turned to Lura. "Where are we going?" She smiled slightly. "Home. A place called Illyra. It is not my world, but it is safe. It is where our allies are waiting." "Allies?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "Others who are against the ones who hunted Nova. Good beings like you. They will help her, teach her, protect her." Elliot looked down at Nova. She was already sleeping, her tiny fingers curled around his thumb. "What happens after that?" Lura looked at him for a moment. "That depends on her, and on you." The next few days on the ship passed slowly, yet peacefully. The ship had no sharp corners. Everything was smooth and glowing. The walls changed color to match the light of nearby stars. Sometimes soft music played by itself, as if the ship could feel their moods. Nova adjusted quickly. She liked the floating toys that the ship created for her, balls of glowing light that danced in the air. She laughed when she touched them, and they burst into sparkles. She was still young, but Elliot could tell she was learning fast. Every day she showed new abilities. She could now make her toys move without touching them. She sometimes even spoke in soft whispers, words from her own language, which Elliot couldn't understand but found beautiful. Lura spent most of her time in the control room, watching maps, checking signals. She was still worried. "They may follow us," she said one night. "Even now they might be tracking the trail of Nova's energy." "Can they find us?" Elliot asked. Lura didn't answer directly. "We'll be ready if they do." On the second night, Elliot couldn't sleep. He walked through the halls of the ship trying to understand everything that had changed. He thought about his old life, the pain of losing his wife and daughter in a car crash. That pain had pushed him into the forest away from the world. He had lost his family, his reason to live. But now Nova had filled that hole in his heart. Her tiny hands, her laughter, her light. It had healed something inside him. He wasn't just protecting her anymore. He needed her. She had given him purpose again. He entered a room that looked like a garden. Plants from other planets glowed softly in the dark. Strange birds flew silently through the air. The whole room was warm and alive. It was peaceful. Lura joined him there. She could sense his thoughts. "She chose you," she said gently. Elliot looked up. "Do you think I can really raise her? I'm not her kind. I don't know anything about this galaxy, these powers, her future." Lura sat beside him. "Parenthood is not about knowing everything. It's about choosing to stay, to protect, to love. You already do all of that." Elliot looked at the glowing plants. "I just want her to be happy, safe." Lura's face became serious. "There is something you must know." She paused before continuing. "Nova was not just born gifted. She was created. Not by machines, but chosen. Before birth, her soul was placed inside her body with a purpose. Her kind, our kind, believe in the balance, the force that keeps peace across the stars. Sometimes, when the balance is in danger, a child like her is born. One who can feel both light and darkness. One who can choose the future." Elliot stared at her. "You mean she's some kind of chosen one?" Lura nodded. "Yes, and others know this. That is why she is hunted. If they get her, they can use her to bring destruction." Elliot felt a chill. "So this will never end?" "No," she said, "but she will grow stronger, and with people like you beside her, she will never be alone." The next day, the ship neared Illyra. As they approached, Elliot saw it through the wide window, a beautiful planet floating in the middle of a glowing nebula. It had blue oceans, silver forests, and floating islands in the sky. Soft rings circled it like golden ribbons. The ship slowed down and entered the atmosphere. It passed through pink clouds and flew over tall mountains before landing near a crystal city. Buildings sparkled like glass. Beings of different shapes and colors walked peacefully below. Some flew, some hovered, but all looked kind. A group of elders stood waiting at the landing dock. They had long robes and glowing eyes. One of them stepped forward. "Welcome, Lura of Serene," he said. "And welcome, Earth Guardian." Elliot looked confused. "Guardian?" The elder smiled. "She chose you. That makes you more than her protector. You are her anchor, her guide." Nova smiled when she saw the elder and waved. Over the next few days, Elliot and Nova stayed in a beautiful tree home high above the ground. Lura stayed nearby, helping Nova adjust. The people of Illyra taught Elliot about their world, about energy, about harmony, about how each being had a purpose, a frequency that matched the song of the universe. Elliot felt like an outsider at first, but Nova made him feel at home. Every time she giggled or reached for his hand, he knew he belonged. But even in peace, danger was never far. On the fifth night, Alarms echoed through the city. Laura ran into Elliot's room. "They found us," she said. Outside, the sky was burning. Ships, black and sharp like knives, were falling from space. The hunters had returned. Elliot grabbed Nova and ran with Laura. The city prepared for battle. Shields rose around buildings. Fighters flew into the sky. The elders chanted, creating protective energy, but the enemy was strong, faster, smarter, and more prepared than before. Elliot and Laura took Nova to a hidden temple in the forest. It was ancient, built before memory. In the center stood a tall pillar with a glowing symbol, one that matched the shape of Nova's crystal. "This is where she must choose," Laura said. "This temple will awaken her true power, but she must do it on her own." Elliot looked down at Nova. "Are you ready?" Nova nodded. He placed her on the platform. The moment her feet touched it, the crystal on her neck burst with light. A beam shot into the sky. The ground trembled. Trees swayed. And suddenly, time stopped. Elliot saw everything go silent. The world paused, and Nova changed. She began to float, her body glowing like the sun. Her eyes turned white, filled with stars. Her voice echoed in all languages. "I am Nova. I am light." The hunters reached the temple, but it was too late. Nova lifted her hands. Energy spread in waves, not to destroy but to heal. The enemy ships began to fall, not with fire but with peace. Their weapons melted into water. Their hatred faded into dust. The hunters dropped to their knees, their minds calmed by her light. Some began to weep. Others simply disappeared into the forest, no longer bound by darkness. When the light faded, Nova slowly floated back into Elliot's arms. She was tired but smiling. Laura fell to her knees, crying softly. "It is done," she whispered. "She has chosen light." The city of Elira celebrated for 3 days. Peace had returned, for now. But everyone knew the galaxy still held shadows. There would always be those who feared the light. But Nova would never be alone. Elliot stayed by her side. He became a guardian in truth, trained in Illyrian ways, taught to defend her not just with weapons but with wisdom. He learned to hear the song of the stars. He became more than human. One night, as he sat under the twin moons of Illyra, Nova crawled into his lap and asked him a simple question. "Will we go back to Earth?" Elliot smiled. "Someday," he said, "when the stars are ready." And with that, they watched the sky together, knowing that their story was only beginning. Elliot woke up early that morning. The sky above Illyra was full of soft pink clouds, and 2 suns were rising slowly on the horizon. He sat by the edge of the floating balcony, Nova wrapped in a blanket beside him. She had grown a little. Her features were still alien, soft silver skin, glowing blue eyes. But there was something unmistakably human in her smile, something he recognized every time she looked at him. Love, trust, a bond stronger than blood. It had been 2 months since Nova released her power at the ancient temple and stopped the hunters. The planet was peaceful again. The city below shimmered in the golden light, and its people moved with calmness and joy. Children laughed in the crystal parks. Floating creatures danced in the skies. Music like wind echoed from the towers. But Elliot couldn't shake off the feeling that something was coming. He had learned enough in these 2 months to know that peace never stayed for too long, not for someone like Nova. Laura entered the room quietly. Her silver cloak brushed the floor without a sound. She stood beside him and looked at the sleeping child. "She's strong," she said softly. "Stronger than any of us expected, but she's not ready yet." Elliot nodded. "She will be." Laura looked at him. "There's something you need to know." He turned to her, eyebrows raised. "The hunters, they weren't working alone. We believed they served only one of the dark houses, but we were wrong. There's a greater force behind them, one that's been asleep for centuries." Nova's light disturbed its slumber. Elliot's heart sank. "What kind of force?" Laura's face turned serious. "A god, or something close to it," The old dark. The one we thought was destroyed during the last Starfall War. But its energy has returned. She handed him a small orb. When Elliot touched it, visions rushed into his mind. He saw a black planet floating in a dead part of the galaxy. He saw its surface cracked and burning, and a massive creature with no face, only a swirling void where a head should be. He saw stars dying around it, worlds turning to dust. He pulled his hand away, breathing heavily. "How do we stop something like that?" he whispered. Laura looked out at the rising suns. "We don't." "She does." That same day the elders called Elliot and Nova to the Hall of Echoes, a grand chamber built with glass and light, filled with glowing vines and floating books that whispered when you passed them. The oldest of the elders, a being named Valus, spoke to them. "Nova must begin her journey of light," he said. "She must learn who she is, not just what power she holds, but what choices she must make. Light is not only for healing. Sometimes it must fight. Sometimes it must burn." Elliot held Nova close. "I'll go with her." Valus shook his head. "This journey must begin alone. She must travel into the celestial path, a place between time and space, where souls speak and truth shows itself." Elliot stood in silence. Nova looked up at him, confused, sensing the change. He kneeled beside her, brushing her hair back gently. "Do you remember when we first met?" he asked. She nodded. "You were so small, just crying on my doorstep. And now look at you. You've already saved a whole world." Nova touched his face. Her skin glowed softly. "Will you come back?" he asked her. She smiled. "Always." That night, they took her to the Moon Gate, a sacred place where travelers could enter other realms. The gate was shaped like a giant silver ring, standing in the middle of a lake that reflected the stars. Elliot stood back as Nova stepped forward. Light surrounded her, lifting her slowly into the air. Her eyes glowed, and the stars themselves seemed to shimmer brighter. Then, in a blink, she disappeared into the light. The journey inside the celestial path was unlike anything Nova had ever experienced. She floated through colors, through memories that weren't hers. She saw Earth. She saw Illyra. She saw the black planet and the faceless god waiting to rise. She heard voices, some kind, some cruel. Some belonged to her ancestors, some to beings from the future. One voice, soft and warm, belonged to her mother. "My child," the voice whispered, "you were born from love, not war. Use that love. Let it guide you." Nova passed trials. She faced her fears, visions of Elliot dying, the galaxy burning, herself turning into the same darkness she fought against. But she never gave up. Every time she felt lost, she thought of Elliot's arms, his smile, the warmth of his stories. She held on to that. When she returned from the celestial path, she was different. She floated down from the sky like a star. Her hair glowed with golden light. Her eyes carried galaxies in them. She was no longer just a child. She was the light bearer. Elliot ran to her and held her. "Nova, you're back." She looked at him. "It's coming. The old dark. We don't have much time." And she was right. Within hours, the sky above Illyra darkened. Clouds of black energy spread across the stars. A massive shape appeared. In the sky, part machine, part shadow. It was the god of the void, awakened at last. Fear spread through the city. Even the bravest warriors stepped back. Elliot turned to Nova. "What do we do?" She floated up and spoke loud enough for the whole city to hear. "We don't run. We shine." And then she rose into the sky, surrounded by a burning sphere of light. The final battle began. The gods sent waves of darkness, creatures made of shadow, ships that devoured light. But Nova stood in front of them all, her hands raised, her heart steady. Elliot stood behind her, sword in hand, ready to protect her with his life. The battle lasted for hours. Nova's light hit the god, and it screamed, shaking planets nearby. It tried to enter her mind, but she pushed it back. With each strike, she became brighter. Stronger. She wasn't just fighting with energy. She was fighting with love, with the memories of her mother, her people, and the human man who gave her a home. At one point, the god managed to hit her. She fell from the sky, crashing into the city. Elliot ran to her, his heart breaking. "Nova," she opened her eyes slowly. "I'm not done yet." She stood, weak but smiling. "Help me," she whispered. Elliot held her hand. Their energies joined, human and alien, father and daughter, light and soul. Together they flew up into the sky. A beam of golden and white light shot from their hands, piercing the heart of the god. The creature howled and cracked, falling apart like sand. The battle was over. The skies cleared. Light returned. Nova floated down gently, glowing like a sunrise. Elliot fell to his knees beside her, tears in his eyes. "You did it," he whispered. "No," she said, smiling. "We did. The galaxy was safe, for now. The god was gone. But Nova had become a legend, a being of peace and power. The Illyrians built a temple in her name. Songs were written. Stars were named after her. Elliot stayed by her side, not as her protector anymore, but as her father. He helped raise her, not into a weapon, but into a leader. Years passed. One day Nova asked Elliot, "Can we go back to Earth now?" Elliot smiled. "Yes, I think it's time." They returned to the same cabin in the forest. The world had changed, but the trees were the same, the wind was the same, the stars above were the same, and as they sat by the fire that night, Nova looked up and said, "You saved me that night when you opened the door." Elliot looked at her and said, "No, you saved me." And the stars, brighter than ever, watched quietly as father and daughter, born of two worlds, finally found peace.